I was out on site earlier this week over in Birmingham and unusually came across another drone operator on the same site. He was doing a site survey, I was doing video. And we started to discuss some of the practicalities of drone flying and in particular recording. How do we record all our flights and our operations? This video is not so much about how you manage that in terms of your operations manual, but more from the perspective of how I use GIS to help me in planning and recording data about all my drone operations. Since I've been using drones, I've been using ArcGIS, in particular the Esri products, so I've been using Arc Desktop, Arc Map and now Arc Pro to record all of my flights. And over time that's evolved to the extent now that I'm recording data in the field for each flight using a number of the different apps which Esri offer. So this video now is going to look at the various apps I use and how they help me. I will just quickly cover the operations manual side of it. Like everybody else within your ops manual, you'll have, I'm sure, the usual things like pre-site survey, site survey, and of course you've got your risk assessment. A lot of the jobs I undertake are multiple visits to the same site. So I generally have a RAMS covering a set period. So I don't need to repeat the RAMS for every site visit, but I update the site planning for each occasion I'm there. Right, here we have Arc Pro. What we're showing here is some data, which is the yellow dots for effectively every drone flight I've undertaken. Now I've changed this slightly in the last few months. So since May, a new site will be represented by one dot, and there'll be the individual flights within that site. Obviously you can see the concentration around the Midlands where I'm located. Now if you look down the left hand side, in addition I have mapped the UK airspace, so that's showing things like airfields, restricted areas, prohibited areas. I'm not showing on this particular file all the separate classes of airspace because that obviously would colour the whole of the UK, but I have mapped separately the FRZs. Now this data, as in the airfields and all the FRZs, I downloaded the GIS data from NATS, so I'm confident that the extent of all those various polygons is accurate. So if I then zoom in, you'll see FRZ in more detail here. This is East Midlands Airport. This is the laser site at Shepshed, and dots within, in this particular case, within the FRZ. And just bear in mind that FRZs are relatively recent, so some of these drone flights would have been done prior to either the FRZ coming into place or I've got approval from East Midlands ATC. One further data layer I have, which is from an online data source, is weather. If I just click on this current weather and wind station data, I don't use it a lot, but sometimes it's useful. So if I click on the arrow, that's showing me the wind direction. And so today's date 150, winds 140 degrees at 15 kph. It's sometimes a useful guide. I do tend to look at the airfield METARs and TAFs if I want detail. And other point of note is these weather stations, if I just turn off the FRZs, these weather stations are only located on major airfields, so you don't get the wind forecast in between them. If we now look at an individual job, if I click on this yellow dot, I've actually filmed at this location a number of times. Early part of this year, in February, I did a site survey. It was of the river area, and on it you'll see I recorded where it was, the flight number, the drone I used. In this case it was an EB, owner's permission, terrain, farmland undulating, public access. We've got the public right-of-way marina, and got the FRZ, which I'll show you in a minute. Now within the site itself there's no ground restrictions or ground hazards, and I'll come on to the rather obvious hazard of the power station, which is just to the side of it. So for each area I'm wanting to fly, I add a polygon. So you'll see we were flying this section of river. So I've now got the river, and also if I load up the FRZ, you'll see that I was pretty close to the boundary of the FRZ, and the centre line is pretty much east-west, about 2 kilometres south of where I am here. So for each location, I'm recording in my pre-flight survey and my site survey, which are part of the ops manual, obvious things like these cooling towers, and there's the large chimney for the overall site, which is just over here. What I've started to do is record these. So I've got 3 principal files. I've got point data, line data, and polygon data, and they're all split up into different categories. So if I click on the polygon data and the line data, you'll see that now I've got cooling towers, which are 120 meters high, and I've got a railway running down the side of the site. What I'm also able to do is label those features. So if I click on the labeling tool, it shows the general area of the cooling towers and the chimney, and likewise I could do the same for any other feature in the system. So I'm now beginning to build up a picture of the key things which will be in and around the flight that I was planning. So back to the construction site, I fly this one every month. As I've said before, I used to do a yellow dot for each flight. But what I've started to do since May is record a separate record in a separate data file for each flight. So you'll see now a little red dots appearing. Now this data is held within ArcGIS Online, so it's held in the cloud. Now that means I can view the data either in here, Arc Pro, I can use it in ArcLine on my desktop, or more importantly, I can link and use that data using my smartphone. So when I'm in the field and I'm about to start a flight, I record the point where I'm standing, so that's going to be accurate within 3 or 4 meters. And on that, I record basics like the site, the flight name, the time, the drone I'm using, the battery charge at the beginning, battery temperature, the battery at the end, and I also record the weather. And I'll show you that in a second. But if I click on one of these records, you will see here that I flew the site on the 31st of July, 7:55 in the morning, overcast, wind 10 to 15, no livestock, Mavic 2 Pro, battery number 11, start off with 98%, battery was 20 degrees, volts were good, and the battery ended at 56%. So now I've got a record for every single flight I've undertaken and the position from where that takeoff was. So in the field, this is how it looks. This is the app, so I'm literally set up, ready to fly. I press update point, I'll give it a name, Birmingham, and I'll then give it a job number. Now the next boxes from drone onwards, I'm using a lot of drop-down lists. Just makes data entry a lot easier. So I select Mavic 3 Pro, there's no livestock. I enter the time, the weather, which I've given various categories, which battery I'm using, the percentage battery life at the start, the battery temp, the volts, where they're checking the cells are all even. And when I finish the flight, I enter the remaining batteries to say 36%, and then I press submit, and that's immediately uploaded to the cloud, so I can then sync it back to the desktop. Moving to a city centre site, which I filmed a couple of days ago. Again, this is another regular one, so you'll see the site. But I've also got a tower crane, which is in the centre of the site, which will be used for the building out of this block of flats. I've got a power line running across here. It's probably 33 or 11 kV on timber poles, so not that high. And I've got a big tower block just sitting to the side. Now, you're viewing this in what's referred to as the map view, but what I then do is I output that as a layout. So if I now click to the right layout, this is showing the map. I've added the legend below so I can see the various features within it. So tower block is an obstruction. I've got the data up here. Just note that this won't all be accurate. And also what I've got on the side is a larger scale map of where that site is on the edge of Birmingham. You've got Birmingham Airfield over here. And these are all linked. If I move this map, it moves that one. So all the relevant areas come up. So I've got to hand now a plan of the site, where I'm flying, and the hazards, obstructions, proximities, any sensitive areas in and around where I'm flying. The last thing I want to show you is very much work in progress. I'm looking here at the 2D map. If I then move over to a 3D version of that map, I've got it as a different background. I've got a roads background. But what I can then do is look at the site in a 3D perspective. So I've got the site here is extruded in red. I've got a tower crane and I've got a tower block. I can add in other buildings, but it starts getting complex if I start to do a lot of sites. I start to have quite lots of data. But that's something I'm looking at to assist with flight planning in more complex areas. I hope you found it of interest, and as my ideas evolve and I change the way I work, I'll do further updates. Thanks very much.